The soft golden light of late afternoon spilled into the penthouse, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. On the white marble kitchen counter, standing out amidst scattered documents and an open laptop, was one thing that didn't belong to Leah Holloway's world: a lace-edged invitation card, faintly scented with cheap perfume. Leah stood still, her fingertip grazing the surface of the card. The feeling was strangely familiar. It had been 15 years since the last time she received anything from the Holloway family, aside from cold stares and sharp whispers behind her back. 15 years of silence. And now a simple invitation, as if nothing had ever happened. She laughed, a dry, brittle sound that echoed across the empty kitchen. On the laptop screen behind her, a bold headline blazed: Leah Holloway, tech queen named in Forbes 30 under 40. The woman behind a $4 billion empire. The news had exploded like a bomb Leah had deliberately kept hidden, locked away in the solitude of her private life. She once believed that if she stayed silent long enough, if her success remained quiet enough, her family would never find out. She could live her own life, free from judgment, free from demands. But the world doesn't work that way. Within hours, social media, newspapers, emails, everything had erupted. Old photos were unearthed. Her name was suddenly everywhere, tied to the hottest story in the country. Her company, ArcLight Dynamics, was now a household name. And then the invitation arrived. Like a dull blade reopening wound she thought had long scarred over. Almost everything in this world could be bought: fame, power, fortune, but the acceptance of family? A place called home? No amount of money could ever buy that. Leah had learned that lesson the hard, painful way. The phone buzzed quietly on the counter. A message flashed across the screen. Chris Holloway is calling. Leah closed her eyes, exhaling slowly, letting the ringtone echo unanswered into the silence. She knew why he was calling. She knew all too well. Night fell, and the city lights flickered outside the towering windows. Leah cradled a glass of wine, silently watching the vast world she had conquered with her own two hands. A world that had no place for those who once turned their backs on her. But she also knew this: the game had only just begun. And this time she was the one holding all the pieces. 2 days later, Leah stood in front of the grand iron gates of Holloway Manor. A place that, once upon a time, she had dreamed of escaping. Now, ironically, it was welcoming her back. Not out of love. No, this was something else entirely. The gates creaked open, as if protesting her presence. Leah's black heels clicked sharply against the stone driveway as she made her way up, every step echoing in the cold evening air. The manor was exactly as she remembered it, painfully immaculate. Rows of trimmed hedges lined the path. Marble columns loomed tall and imposing. The chandeliers inside flickered with a harsh, sterile light, casting ghostly reflections across the tall windows. A butler she didn't recognize opened the door. He bowed stiffly, eyes avoiding hers, and gestured her inside without a word. Leah's heels sank slightly into the thick Persian carpets as she crossed the threshold. The air smelled of furniture polish and something sickly sweet, desperation perhaps. In the grand hall, the Holloways had already gathered. Christopher Holloway, her father, sat at the head of the long dining table. Time had not softened him. His posture was rigid, his silver hair neatly combed back. His expression the same mixture of disdain and calculation Leah had seen since childhood. Beside him, her stepmother, Vanessa Holloway, radiated a brittle kind of beauty, like a porcelain doll ready to crack. Around the table sat her half-siblings, Ava, Marcus, and sweet little Claire. All grown up now, their faces twisted into polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. "Leah," Christopher said, his voice colder than the autumn wind rattling the windows. "You're looking well." There it was. The Holloway signature. A compliment so sharp it could draw blood. Leah smiled thinly. Success tends to have that effect. The room shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa was the first to break the tension. We're so proud of you, dear. We always knew you had potential. The lie slid from her tongue so smoothly, it was almost admirable. Leah felt a surge of bitter amusement. The same woman who once sneered at her hand-me-down clothes now spoke as if she'd been cheering Leah on from the sidelines. "Forgive me," Leah said sweetly, her voice dripping with sugar and venom. "I don't remember you attending any of my graduations. Or was it the funerals you were saving your tears for?" Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Christopher cleared his throat, his knuckles whitening around the armrest of his chair. "We're not here to dredge up the past. We're here to move forward." Leah raised an eyebrow. "Forward into what exactly?" It was Marcus who answered, his voice slick and practiced like a used car salesman. "The family business, of course. With your recent success, we believe there's an opportunity for collaboration. Expansion. Collaboration. Expansion." Pretty words for what they really wanted: her money, her influence, her power. And suddenly Leah understood. They didn't want her back. They wanted what she had built without them. She leaned back against the chair, tapping her manicured nails against the mahogany table. "Interesting," she said slowly. "And what exactly would I gain from collaborating?" Ava flashed her most charming smile. "Reconnection. Family. Belonging." Leah laughed, a low, dangerous sound. "Belonging," she repeated. "That's rich, coming from the people who once locked me out of this house on Christmas Eve." Vanessa's smile cracked visibly, and even Christopher shifted uncomfortably. Leah let the silence stretch, savoring the growing tension. Good. Let them squirm. Let them taste even a fraction of the humiliation they'd fed her for years. "I'll think about it," Leah said finally, rising to her feet with deliberate grace. "But make no mistake, if I come back into the Holloway fold, I won't be coming quietly." She turned and walked away without another word, her heels cutting into the silence like a knife. As the front door swung shut behind her, she smiled to herself. They thought they could manipulate her. They thought they could buy her loyalty now, just because they finally realized her worth. They had no idea the storm they had just invited into their perfect, crumbling little kingdom. And Leah? Leah was more than ready to burn it all down, if that's what it took to make them finally see her. The following week was a masterclass in polite warfare. Leah returned to Holloway Manor, this time not as the forgotten daughter, but as a queen visiting foreign soil. Dangerous, calculating, and unwilling to bow. The Holloways tried everything. Lavish dinners, hollow flattery, carefully staged family photos. All desperate attempts to weave her into their crumbling tapestry of wealth and influence. At first, Leah played along, smiling through gritted teeth, pretending to listen as Marcus pitched ideas for joint ventures that reeked of desperation, or as Ava suggested charity galas, for visibility. But behind those polite smiles, Leah was gathering ammunition. She noticed the subtle exchanges, the fleeting glances between Christopher and Marcus, the hushed arguments in the study when they thought no one was listening, the panic that flared when Leah asked too many questions about the family accounts. Something was rotten beneath the polished surface. One night, after another suffocating dinner where Vanessa gushed about her perfect little family, Leah excused herself early. Instead of going to her room, she wandered the manor's labyrinthine halls. She ended up at Christopher's study, a room once forbidden to her as a child. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Marcus and Christopher were deep in conversation. "She's not stupid, Dad," Marcus hissed. "She'll figure it out." "She won't," Christopher snapped. "She's desperate for a place to belong. We'll secure her resources first. After that, it won't matter." Leah's blood turned to ice. Resources. That's all she was to them. A wallet with legs. She backed away silently, her mind racing. She could leave right now. Cut ties, move on, let the Holloways rot in their own filth. But where was the satisfaction in that? No. They had invited her into their game. It was only fair she played by her own rules. The next day, Leah floated a suggestion over breakfast. "I've been thinking," she said, buttering her toast with deliberate nonchalance. "Maybe I should invest directly into Holloway Enterprises. Help streamline operations. You know, get my hands dirty." Christopher's fork paused midair. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. Even Vanessa blinked too fast, hiding panic behind her perfect facade. "That's generous of you, dear," Christopher said carefully. "Of course, we'd have to arrange proper oversight." Leah smiled sweetly. "I insist." By noon, a meeting was arranged. By evening, Leah had reviewed enough documents to make her stomach turn. Fraud, embezzlement, decades of covering financial disasters with borrowed money and forged reports. The Holloways weren't royalty guarding an empire. They were rats patching holes on a sinking ship. And now they'd practically begged her to board it. Leah leaned back in the leather chair, savoring the moment. She had everything she needed. Everything except the perfect way to crush them. 3 days later she found it. Claire, the youngest Holloway, approached Leah in secret. Claire had always been different. Softer. Kinder. The only one who used to slip Leah scraps of birthday cake when no one was watching. "I don't want to be part of this anymore," Claire whispered, hands trembling. "I found these. Dad and Marcus have been hiding them." She handed Leah a flash drive. Inside, correspondence, bank statements, enough to dismantle Holloway Enterprises piece by piece. It was beautiful. Poetic. The very family that had thrown her away had just handed her the blade to slit their own throats. Leah hugged Claire tightly. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'll protect you." Claire's eyes shone with silent gratitude. The others could burn. Claire at least deserved to be spared. The final confrontation was almost anticlimactic. Leah called for a family meeting in the Grand Hall. Christopher, Vanessa, Marcus, and Ava filed in, exuding false confidence. Only Claire lingered close to Leah's side. "What's this about?" Christopher demanded. Leah stood in the center of the room, holding a thick folder of evidence. "This," she said, her voice clear and cutting, "is about the truth." One by one, she laid out their sins, the fraud, the money laundering, the betrayal. Vanessa gasped. Ava tried to deny it. Marcus cursed under his breath. Christopher turned a frightening shade of gray. "You have 2 choices," Leah said calmly, enjoying their unraveling. "Public humiliation and prison. Or sign over everything. Holloway Enterprises, the estate, every last asset, to me." "You wouldn't dare," Christopher rasped. Leah smiled coldly. "I already have." She tossed copies of the documents at their feet. "Make your choice. Fast. The press is very curious these days." Marcus lunged forward as if to snatch the papers, but Christopher stopped him with a trembling hand. In that moment Leah saw it. The fall of a dynasty. Not with an explosion, but with a quiet, broken surrender. One by one they signed. Pale. Shaking. Defeated. When it was over, Leah gathered the papers and turned away without another glance. Claire slipped her hand into Leah's, squeezing it tightly. Outside, the wind howled against the manor's towering walls. Inside, Holloway Manor belonged to Leah now. Not because they welcomed her. Because she had earned it. And she had taken it, piece by trembling piece. And the best part? They had handed it to her themselves. The days following the Holloway's collapse were a whirlwind. News spread like wildfire. Financial scandals. Secret deals. The spectacular fall of one of the oldest names in the city. Reporters camped outside the gates of Holloway Manor like vultures, cameras flashing whenever a Holloway dared step outside. Christopher Holloway's once proud name became synonymous with disgrace. Ava and Marcus fled. Ava to Europe, Marcus to some hidden retreat in South America, hoping to wait out the storm. Vanessa stayed, clinging to the manor like a ghost, wandering its echoing halls in silk robes, muttering about family honor. Only Claire remained by Leah's side. Together they gutted the rot from Holloway Enterprises piece by piece. It wasn't easy. Some nights Leah worked until dawn, sifting through decades of lies. There were lawsuits to fight, debts to settle, traitors to root out. But Leah didn't falter. She had rebuilt herself from dust before. This time she was rebuilding an empire. And this empire would bear her name, not theirs. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of meetings and negotiations, Claire found Leah in the old garden, the one their mother had once loved. The roses were overgrown, the fountain dry and cracked. Leah stood staring at the decaying beauty, lost in thought. "You did it," Claire said softly, approaching. "You saved us." Leah let out a hollow laugh. "Did I?" Claire frowned. "You saved what mattered. You saved yourself." Leah turned to look at her. For a moment the tough, unshakable woman cracked, revealing the tired, scarred soul beneath. "I didn't want to destroy them," Leah admitted. "Not at first. I just wanted to be seen." Claire took her hand. "You were always worth seeing. They were just too blind to notice." The sincerity in Claire's voice stirred something deep inside Leah. Something fragile and long buried. Hope. Weeks passed. Holloway Enterprises slowly rebranded under Leah's new leadership. Fresh faces replaced old, corrupt ones. New blood, new ideas. The world whispered at first. A fallen Holloway daughter running the shattered remains of an empire? But Leah was relentless. Smart. Strategic. Charismatic when she needed to be, ruthless when she had to be. Investors who once scoffed at her name now begged for meetings. The media crowned her the Queen of Ashes, the woman who rose from betrayal and built an empire out of ruins. And Leah? She smiled for the cameras, but deep down she knew the truth. This was only the beginning. One night a letter arrived. No return address. No signature. Inside, a single line written in familiar, trembling handwriting. "We're sorry." Leah stared at it for a long time. Christopher's handwriting. Pathetic. Meaningless. Too little, too late. She crumpled the letter and tossed it into the fireplace, watching the flames devour it without a flicker of regret. Forgiveness was a luxury she no longer afforded others, or herself. She had learned the hardest way possible. Sometimes blood wasn't thicker than ambition. Sometimes family wasn't worth saving. The final piece of her plan unfolded on a golden evening 6 months later. A grand gala was hosted in the heart of the city. The first official event under Leah Holloway's leadership. Everyone who mattered attended. Business moguls, celebrities, politicians. And there, standing tall among them, Leah dazzled in a midnight blue gown, her hair pinned back like a crown, diamonds glittering at her throat. She wasn't the abandoned girl anymore. She wasn't a pawn in someone else's game. She was the game. As the orchestra swelled and the chandeliers glittered, Leah stepped onto the stage. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice smooth and commanding. "Tonight is not about the past. It's about the future." Applause thundered through the hall. "And the future," Leah said, smiling that sharp, knowing smile, "belongs to those who dare to take it." Every word rang out like a promise and a warning. Somewhere in the shadows of the gala, Leah thought she glimpsed familiar faces. Christopher's sagging form, Ava's bitter glare, Marcus lurking near the exits. But she didn't falter. She didn't look twice. They were ghosts. She had buried them with their own sins. This was her world now. Her empire. Her legacy. Later that night, standing alone on the grand balcony, Leah looked out over the glittering city. The air was cool, crisp. Claire joined her, handing her a glass of champagne. "You did it," Claire whispered. Leah clinked her glass against Claire's. "No," she said with a small, fierce smile. "We did it." And as the first stars pierced the velvet sky, Leah Holloway, the girl they once threw away, stood at the pinnacle of everything they said she could never have. Not because she was born into greatness, but because she took it, and she would never, ever give it back. The cool, early morning mist hung low over the city, a symbol of the cold, calculated precision with which Leah Tran had orchestrated her rise. The streets, still sleepy with the remnants of the night, were about to witness the dawn of something they had never expected, the rise of a force so formidable, it would rewrite the future of her family, her company, and her life. But Leah wasn't concerned with the city's reaction. Her thoughts were on something much bigger. The meeting with Ava, Marcus, and Christopher had been a turning point. For years, they had all underestimated her. Christopher had thought his charm and cunning could hold her back. Ava's arrogance had made her blind to Leah's intelligence, and Marcus's cruelty had pushed Leah to her breaking point. But Leah had never been the victim. She had always been the quiet observer, biding her time. Now, as the doors to her office closed behind her, Leah stood alone in the center of the penthouse, a space that had once belonged to her father. The skyline of the city stretched out before her, an empire in the making. This was her moment. She could feel the weight of everything she had endured in her bones, and it fueled her. The small, timid girl who had once been ignored, ridiculed, and dismissed was no more. In her place stood a woman with power, real power, and no one was going to take it from her. Leah didn't need to look over her shoulder. She knew Christopher was still out there, plotting his next move. He had tried to play the role of the devoted brother, but deep down, Leah knew he had never truly understood her. Ava had followed him blindly, and Marcus, well, Marcus was simply a puppet, a pawn to be sacrificed when the time came. But they were all pawns in her game now. The board was hers to control. The phone buzzed on her desk. It was a reminder of the meeting she had scheduled for later in the day, the final step in solidifying her control. But Leah didn't rush. She took a moment to look out over the city once again. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. The weight of revenge had been lifted from her shoulders. She had done what she needed to do. But now it was time to move beyond that. Leah's thoughts shifted to the future. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted legacy. She wanted to reshape her family's company, Evelyn Dynamics, into something that not only honored her father's legacy, but also shattered the illusions her family had built around themselves. She would do it her way, not theirs. The door to her office opened, and a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Tran," a voice called, calm yet purposeful. Leah turned to find her trusted assistant, Emma, standing in the doorway. Emma had been with her through the most tumultuous parts of this journey, a steady ally when others had faltered. "The meeting with the board is in 30 minutes, Emma said, glancing at Leah's contemplative expression. "Everything is set. They're ready to hear you speak." Leah nodded. She knew this was the moment she had been preparing for her entire life. With a steady breath, she walked toward Emma. "Let's go," Leah said, her voice clear and unwavering. As they stepped into the elevator, Leah felt the weight of her father's legacy surrounding her. Evelyn Dynamics had once been a company built on his vision, but now it was her turn to redefine it. She would no longer be the shadow of her family's expectations. She would be the one who defined the future. The elevator doors opened, and Leah walked into the boardroom, where a sea of expectant faces awaited her. The room fell silent as she entered, all eyes on her. She had been the quiet sister, the forgotten heir, but now she commanded the room. Leah took her seat at the head of the table. Without any preamble, she began speaking, her words calculated and precise, each sentence a step in her grand design. The board members listened, entranced by her confidence and vision. They had seen her as the naive daughter of a powerful family, but now they were witnessing the birth of a new era. "Gentlemen, ladies," Leah began, her voice cutting through the silence. "I don't need to remind you of the chaos this company has faced in recent years. You've seen the fall of leaders who thought they were untouchable. But now it's time for something new. It's time for Evelyn Dynamics to rise again. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The board members exchanged glances, some unsure, others eager to see where she was going with this. You see, Leah continued, I've spent my whole life being underestimated, but no more. My vision for this company is simple: innovation, expansion, and most importantly, loyalty. Evelyn Dynamics will no longer be a place of corruption and greed. It will be a place of progress, where those who truly understand the value of hard work will thrive. Her words echoed in the room, each syllable hitting its mark. Leah could see it in their eyes. They were captivated, entranced by the power she exuded. And as for the people who doubted me, who tried to tear me down, let this be a warning, Leah said, her gaze cold and unwavering. You will never again have the opportunity to stand in my way. The silence that followed was deafening. Leah had spoken the truth, and now there was no turning back. The board members were no longer looking at her with skepticism. They were looking at her with respect, fear even. She had earned it. She had claimed her place at the top. As the meeting ended and the board members filed out, Leah remained seated. She watched them leave, a small satisfied smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Leah Tran had done it. She had taken control of her destiny, reclaimed her family's company, and set her sights on a future she would shape on her terms. But as she stood up from the table and walked to the window, she knew this was just the beginning. The real power wasn't in what she had already achieved. It was in what she would continue to build. Leah had learned one thing throughout all of this. No one could stop her. Not now. Not ever. With the city sprawled out before her, Leah felt a sense of clarity. The path ahead was clear. She was the queen of her own empire, and she would rule it with a vengeance.